I wasn't supposed to be home. That's what made all the difference. My flight from the Chicago Tech Conference was canceled, mechanical issue, and instead of wasting another night in a Hyatt, I decided to drive the 4 hours back. I didn't text Megan. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe even make her morning with coffee and that croissant she liked from the corner bakery. But surprises work both ways. It was just after 11 p.m. when I walked in. Lights dim, soft jazz whispering from her laptop. Two half-full wine glasses on the coffee table. She didn't hear me at first. I stood there a second, watching her close a browser tab in a hurry, some private window flickering out like a guilty secret, then swipe both glasses into the sink. She glanced back like she'd seen a ghost. I smiled, but inside something tightened. I've known Megan for 6 years. She wasn't good at hiding discomfort. I made small talk. She forced laughter, said she was winding down from a work call with some old friend from college. But I could smell the difference. Something off, something not mine. I held her, kissed her cheek, and told her I needed to head into the study. Instead, I went into the laundry room. I'm not a jealous man by nature. I'm methodical. But that night, I opened the washer out of instinct, and there it was. A pair of men's shorts, Calvin Klein, size large. I wear medium. My heart didn't drop. It started racing. The next morning, Megan left early for a dental appointment. I told her I'd forgotten a folder at the office, and she bought it. By 10 a.m., I was quietly back in the house, shoes off, walking slowly upstairs. In the bedroom, a different kind of warmth lingered in the air. Cologne. Musky, woody. I opened the closet and sniffed at her clothes. Nothing. But the sheets, the pillows. Someone had been here. That evening, while she showered, I began installing the camera into the mirror by the entry, tiny enough to blend into the reflection. The bedroom clock? It was replaced with a model that housed an audio recorder gifted to me years ago by a friend in private security. She didn't notice a thing. 2 nights later, I had enough to vomit. She let him in like clockwork, tall, bearded, with a navy tee that read, Portland Mechanics. They laughed like old friends, kissed like new lovers. I watched her delete her call logs immediately after he left. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was sharpening. That night I took the empty wine glass she used with him. Using the fingerprint kit from that same security friend, I dusted it on the patio while she snored upstairs. Clear ridge marks. I photographed them, printed them. The next morning I drove straight to the Portland Mechanics workshop and posed as a customer looking for a new alternator. I took pictures of every bearded man in uniform until I saw him. Same walk, same build, same smug aura. I didn't ask his name. I didn't need it. My next move wasn't rage. It was reclamation. The car she loved, the silver Q5 she thought was hers. Technically mine. I'd added her as a user, but the title was in my name alone. A call to a towing company, one notarized slip, and by the afternoon, it was gone. I parked it 3 blocks from my office, keys locked in my safe. She didn't ask where it was. She texted once, "Hey, weird. Car missing?" I replied, "Call the police, maybe." She never did. Instead, she grew more secretive. I grew quieter. I created a new identity, Stephen Morgan, a name I'd used in college for throwaway accounts. Within days, I had a fake auto parts supplier profile up and running, sleek branding, fake reviews, even a business number rerouted through a proxy service. Then I messaged him. The fool was eager. We chatted about potential deals. I offered deep discounts on catalytic converters and off-the-record suppliers. It didn't take long for him to confess to skimming parts off junked vehicles and flipping them on the side. One message, time-stamped and geotagged, read, "As long as it ain't traced, I can sell almost anything. Got a hookup at the scrapyard, too." Meanwhile, I quietly uploaded Megan's phone data into an analytics suite used by law enforcement to map movement and intersections with known criminal zones. The metadata was sickening. She'd been parked overnight in industrial lots known for illegal trading. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal, I was stepping into crime. At her office, while picking up her dry cleaning as a favor, I spotted her work notebook lying on the passenger seat. She never locked her car, idiotically trusting. Inside were payment notes and figures that didn't match the official accounting records she'd shown me. I photocopied the entire section and forwarded it anonymously to the IRS and state tax office. Through a contact at a towing yard, I found more. The man, our Portland mechanic, had been questioned last year in a stolen car ring. Never charged, but very much on the radar. I traced back a shell company, DM Trans Inc., that had been used to lease a storage unit Megan had signed for, fraudulently using my signature. Our joint bank account had been used to pay for the lease. The car she said was replaced by insurance last winter, found registered to DM Trans Inc. When the notary confirmed the signature was forged, I didn't rage. I documented. I had the court clerk sign off on an affidavit. And the next hearing? Megan stood up and screamed obscenities at the judge when they refused to dismiss my motion. The camera in my pocket captured it all. What followed next wasn't relief. It was readiness. I watched her face through the lens, twisted in rage, eyes darting, teeth clenched. She didn't know yet how far the damage would go, or what would come next. She was still fighting shadows. I was dragging them into the light. People talk about revenge like it's some burning fire that keeps you warm through the storm. But the truth is, it's cold, clinical. It's what kept my hands steady when I walked into the office early that Monday, carrying nothing but a thermos and a plan. My co-worker Jack greeted me with the same half-baked smile he always did, none the wiser to the chaos unfolding 2 lives away. By 8:30, I was back in the server room, syncing Megan's mobile logs into an analytics suite I'd built in college. Back when I thought cybersecurity would be my life, I'd forgotten how satisfying it felt to work in total control of a system. Within an hour, I had access to a full year of her phone metadata, calls, locations, logins, deleted message stubs, and even traffic patterns cross-referenced with public surveillance feeds. I wasn't just tracing her infidelity, I was plotting its perimeter. Late that night, I studied the patterns. She wasn't just meeting that mechanic. There were at least 2 other geolocated anomalies. Same industrial zone, same late-night timestamps. Maybe she was just dropping off stolen goods. Maybe it was more. Either way, I documented it. The next morning, I entered her office building under the guise of picking up her forgotten lunchbox. The receptionist smiled at me like we were still the happy couple. I walked past her to the glass-walled break room, Megan's notebook still sitting by the microwave. Same one I'd seen earlier in her car. She never took it home anymore. I lifted it. 5 seconds, one quick shot of the pages, and I left. That was the day I forwarded everything to the tax bureau. Cash flow inconsistencies, the payments to the fake logistics firm, and her personal use of corporate funds. I left the envelope unmarked. Let them figure it out. 2 nights later, a friend of mine, retired vice cop, now a private investigator, helped me take the next step. His team installed 2 high-sensitivity mics, one hidden inside the casing of Megan's rearview mirror, the other discreetly mounted behind the headboard in the kids' playroom, where she often put her phone on speaker while folding clothes. It took 72 hours to get results. But when the first audio files came in, I knew I was on borrowed time. She was planning to take the kids, not just disappear for the weekend, leave the state. The mechanic was in on it. She told him, "We'll head to Arizona before Alex files anything. He won't know until it's too late." That line hit me like a sucker punch. She was using my own children as leverage in a game I hadn't even agreed to play. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at the desk reviewing the data, opening folders like they were doors to parts of my life I didn't recognize. There were voice memos between her and her mother talking about what to do when the custody war starts. There were digital receipts showing toy purchases and food delivery scheduled for a location across state lines. She hadn't just betrayed me, she'd been building a new life while standing in the ruins of mine. By morning, my lawyer had everything. We filed an emergency court motion that same afternoon, audio, video, financial records, timelines, digital backups. The judge moved fast. Within 24 hours, Megan was issued a temporary restraining order forbidding her from entering the house or coming within 100 feet of the kids while the review was underway. She came home that night like nothing had changed, pulled up in an Uber, keys in hand, smiling with a grocery bag. The look on her face when the officer handed her the papers was almost theatrical. Disbelief, rage, confusion, all wrapped in that practiced innocence she used to weaponize so well. I didn't speak to her. I watched from the upstairs hallway as she was escorted out, her cries muffled by the wind as the door shut behind her. The silence that followed was heavy, almost reverent. The next phase came quickly. Through my lawyer, I contracted an IT firm to dismantle her access to our shared digital ecosystem. In under 6 hours, Megan's credentials were purged from our online banking, cloud storage, insurance policies, even the backup drive in our garage safe. She was locked out of every photo, every document, every account. I even deactivated the Face ID she had set on our smart fridge. Her phone blew up with messages to mutual friends. Some of them reached out to me, confused, stunned. I told them the truth in pieces, just enough to keep the story breathing, but not enough to satisfy their gossip-starved hunger. I needed to control the narrative, not feed it. The kids were still asleep when I made the call to my brother Jake. He lived in Arizona, ran a vineyard with his wife, had spare bedrooms, and the kind of quiet backyard where the world couldn't reach. By midnight, I had packed 2 suitcases, loaded the kids into the back of the car, and began the overnight drive under stars that didn't feel like they belonged to me anymore. By dawn, we were in a different state, a different life. The kids thought it was a vacation. I let them believe that. They played with their cousins, started school within a week, and never once asked why mom wasn't calling. Deep down, I think they knew. Meanwhile, back home, I took the house apart, not out of spite, out of necessity. I boxed up every photo with her in it, sold her wardrobe online, removed her name from the utility bills, and canceled the yoga studio membership she loved so much. I replaced the mattress. I repainted the master bedroom in slate gray. There was no crying soundtrack, no dramatic catharsis, just a slow, surgical removal of someone who no longer existed. Insurance policies were rewritten. Megan was no longer a beneficiary, no longer protected. Her name was scrubbed from emergency contacts, health records, travel files. If she was going to start a new life, it wouldn't be on the bones of mine. Still, I didn't feel victorious, just efficient. I was dismantling a decade like a machine pulling itself apart, bolt by bolt. In a way, I think that's what hurt her the most, how quiet I made the fall. 3 weeks passed in Arizona, and not once did Megan call. Not to ask about the kids, not to apologize, not even to scream. I didn't know if that meant she was regrouping or falling apart. Frankly, I didn't care. I had too many threads to pull and too many loose ends to burn off. My days were divided between parenting, legal coordination, and personal warcraft. While the kids settled into their new school, I worked quietly in Jake's guest office, a room that overlooked grapevines and golden light. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it became my war room. The microphones we'd planted in Megan's car were still active, relaying everything through a secure cloud folder. And on a warm Thursday afternoon, I hit play on a recording that made my blood freeze. Megan's voice, sharp, whispering, talking to someone over speakerphone. "He's already filed. I think he's locked me out of everything. We need to move. Maybe take the kids while he's distracted. Arizona's no longer safe." Then came the mechanic's voice, low and annoyed. "I told you this would happen if you waited too long. You should have taken the little ones before he lawyered up." They were still planning, still daring to act like they had options. But it didn't matter anymore. The court had already issued a temporary ban on Megan approaching the house or children. Still, the fact she was strategizing like the game wasn't over. It lit something inside me. That night, I called my lawyer and requested a formal custody acceleration hearing. But we needed every scrap of ammunition to make it permanent. So I gathered everything. Digital copies of her messages, the surveillance footage, bank transfers, and call records. Every kiss she shared with that mechanic was now compressed into crisp clips and graphs, arranged on timelines with timestamps and geolocation markers. Then came the big one. My IT firm managed to breach the backup vault on her Google account. She had no idea it synced with the phone she kept hidden. Inside were dozens of voice memos she'd recorded as diaries. A sick ritual almost. One entry stood out. She described walking through our bedroom while I slept, whispering that she wished I would just disappear so she could be free. She said our life together was a prison of good intentions. She never loved me. She only loved the security I gave her. That sentence stayed with me. I used to imagine our family as a fortress. Now I realize she saw it as a cage, and I was the warden. That weekend, I moved swiftly. My IT contact executed a permanent lockout on all her digital access. Her email was reassigned to a dummy domain. Her social media profiles were either wiped or permanently archived for evidence. Her access to our family cloud? Gone. I even paid a discreet firm to monitor her financial moves. When she attempted to open a new bank account using our old address, I was notified immediately. The games she tried to play weren't even clever anymore. Back home, a storage company hauled off the last of her belongings. The furniture she picked, the rugs she liked, the lamps she bragged about on Instagram, all sold off at a quiet online auction, mostly to strangers. I didn't want the memories. I wanted the space. Jake's garage became my processing center. Inside were 3 metal lockboxes, labeled with red tape, each one holding evidence, legal papers, court documents, transcripts, and photos. I made 3 encrypted copies and placed them in separate states with people I trusted. If Megan ever tried to fight dirty, one email would burn down her world faster than she ever burned mine. But the part that tested me most was telling the kids. It was Sunday night. They sat on the couch, cross-legged, their little faces lit by the TV's blue glow. I muted the screen and told them Mommy wasn't going to be living with us anymore. Jeremy, always the brave one, nodded slowly, like he'd already figured it out. Melissa started to cry. I didn't break. I wrapped my arms around them and promised they'd always be safe, always be loved, and that nothing Megan did could ever change that. After they went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen counter. My phone buzzed, an Arizona number I didn't recognize. When I picked up, it was one of Megan's former co-workers, a woman named Sherry. She was quiet, hesitant. She'd heard about what was going on and wanted me to know something. She used to brag about how easy it was to lie to you, she said. Said you were too focused on your own projects to notice anything. She laughed about it. I didn't reply. What was there to say? She used to tell people you'd never leave her because you were too soft. That one made me pause. I just thought you should know, Sherry finished. She's not who you think. Thanks, I said. Then I hung up. By the following Thursday, Megan's lawyer requested mediation. They wanted to settle privately. I agreed under one condition. The meeting had to take place in my lawyer's office, under full documentation, with a notary and a court observer present. She accepted, probably thinking she could manipulate the conversation in her favor. But I had something else in mind. I arranged the room myself. 4 chairs around a large glass table. Mounted on the far wall were 3 screens hooked to my laptop. The moment Megan stepped into the room, her face contorted. There, paused on the screen, was a still from the security footage. The mechanic's hand on her waist, her mouth grazing his cheek. Another screen displayed the bank transfers. The third? Her voice memo, transcribed and ready. I didn't play anything yet. I just watched her squirm. She sat down like a cornered animal, scanning the table for leverage that didn't exist. The notary nodded. Ready when you are. I slid the settlement across to her. Neutral language, fair custody, split pending final judgment, removal from all shared assets, and an agreement to refrain from harassment or further legal obstruction. If she signed, she might retain some dignity. Her hand hovered above the pen. She glanced at the screens again, and something cracked in her. You planned all this, she whispered. No, I said, keeping my voice flat. You did. She tried to knock over her water. The cup bounced once and spilled across her lap, not the table. She screamed at the notary. She shouted at the court observer. She even lunged at the screen. All of it recorded, all of it witnessed. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, as security led her out of the building. One step closer, but I didn't smile. There was one final move left. 14 days after Megan was dragged out of that law office, her world started collapsing in stages, none of them visible from the outside. No explosions, no media headlines, just a slow, suffocating spiral of paperwork, silence, and locked doors. It started with the tax audit. An agent from the IRS contacted her employer to request a compliance check on several suspicious write-offs tied to Megan's reimbursement logs. I didn't have to lift a finger. The evidence I'd sent anonymously weeks ago did the work for me. One of those logs, hilariously, included a dinner date billed as client entertainment. The same evening I'd been home sick, watching her get dressed from our bed, fevered and suspicious. The audit opened other doors. State Revenue Services began cross-checking her declared business income against private vendor payments. Soon after, a letter arrived addressed to her attorney regarding potential financial misrepresentation in a joint asset declaration. It didn't stop there. A civil complaint landed next, this time from the automotive leasing company. Turns out DM Trans Inc. had used a forged signature, mine, to register two vehicles over a 10-month period, both paid from our joint account. Fraud was proven in under an hour. I didn't even need to show up. My handwriting expert's affidavit and the notary's testimony were more than enough. A court date was set. Megan didn't show. I didn't expect her to. She was still trying to control the outcome through avoidance, as if ignoring the tidal wave would somehow keep her dry. But it didn't. The judge issued a default judgment. Her credit score dropped 120 points in a week. Collections agents began calling. Meanwhile, the emergency custody order became permanent. The social worker assigned to our case reviewed the footage, the transcripts, and her courtroom outburst. Her report to the judge was just 2 pages long, but its message was final. The mother has demonstrated repeated attempts to circumvent legal authority, emotionally manipulate the children, and engage in behavior unbecoming of a suitable custodial parent. She lost everything in that moment, and I mean everything. The house was awarded to me in full. So were the remaining assets, minus a modest sum for her to avoid homelessness. The court even ruled that she owed me compensatory damages for financial fraud and digital identity theft. She cried in the hallway outside the courtroom. No cameras, no sympathy. Just the echo of her heels retreating down the corridor like the last sound of a dying empire. 30 days later, I was awarded final custody of the kids. No appeals allowed? Megan hadn't even filed one. She sent one email, pathetic in its wording, blank in subject line, asking if she could write Jeremy and Melissa letters once a month. I didn't respond. I printed it, placed it in the same red-labeled lockbox with the rest of her wreckage, and slid it back into storage. Some ghosts don't deserve to be buried. They deserve to sit in the dark and collect dust. By October, I had sold everything that reminded me of her. The silver car she adored was gone. The dining table where she smiled across from that mechanic was given away for free to a college student. The master bed was donated to a veteran's shelter. I kept the frame, burned the mattress. The settlement check came in on a Friday afternoon. I stared at the envelope for 10 minutes before opening it, like it was radioactive. Inside, a check for just over $84,000, signed and sealed. No note, no explanation, just silence in cursive. I didn't cash it right away. Instead, I bought a camper van. It wasn't flashy. Blue paint, mild dents on the driver's side door, and a retro kitchen setup that made the kids laugh. It was freedom. It was ours. We left on a Sunday morning with nothing planned except direction, south, then west. We followed the coast all the way down California. Every night I read to them by the campfire. Jeremy started asking questions about the stars. Melissa painted seashells. I let myself feel things I hadn't in years. Not joy exactly, not relief. Just air. Just space. It was at Lake Tahoe that the final chapter closed. We were camping near the waterline. The night was cool and crisp. After the kids fell asleep, I took the lockbox, the one with all the documents, the recordings, the photos, and walked out onto the beach. I'd brought a folding shovel, wrapped in canvas. I found a flat patch between 2 cedar trees and began to dig. The ground was firm but not stubborn. I buried the lockbox a foot beneath the earth and placed a wooden cross above it. Nothing carved, just raw pine. A warning and a tombstone. That flash drive held every bite of the pain she caused. Every inch of the lies she spread across our life. But now it was under the dirt. Not forgiven, not forgotten, just finished. I stood there for a while, hands on my knees, staring at the lake. It looked black, endless, like time itself. The air smelled like pine and firewood. Somewhere behind me, the kids were murmuring in their sleep. I turned around, walked back up to the camper, and didn't look back. The past had teeth, but it didn't own me anymore. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.